Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so participants are starting to come in now. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. We're still a few minutes early before 12 p.m. Eastern time. So we're just letting all of our registered attendees who wanted to get an early jump to come on and join us.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. We will get started right at 12. So come on in. We're so glad you could join us today. Thank you for your patience around rescheduling. Aaron and I both got sick at the same time, even though we live like what, 200 miles apart. Come on in. Welcome, everyone. Good almost afternoon. We will get started in about 2 minutes. There we go. Still see people coming on in. We should have like music in the beginning. Or Aaron can sing.
No, all I could think of was Jeopardy music, like the waiting music. That's went through my head.
I think Terry can sing. Welcome, everybody. Come on in, come on in. We are going to get started in just a minute. Just in 2 minutes. We're happy all of you could join us today. And we know this is over lunchtime, so feel free to eat your lunch and refill your water, take a break as you need it.
Christy, I'm seeing that one of our participants has raised a hand.
I see that.
Nalita Zito, is there something that you need to ask? Oh. I've unmuted you if you'd like to tell us what it is that you needed, Nalita.
I'm fine. I'm trying to manage my value, but it's okay. I'm fine.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. That's right. I know sometimes it's real easy to select these functions, especially if you're reaching over your computer and you touch your touchpad. I do that all the time. Hello, we see lots of hellos in the chat. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Oh, lunchtime on the East Coast, not in Washington. True, true. That's right. I forgot. Thank you for joining us all the way from Washington. Hi, Anna. Somebody said, good afternoon. Can you hear us? I don't see the audio button. Right. So because this is a webinar and we were expecting a lot of attendees, everybody is muted, but Terry, who's helping us out, is able to unmute you if you do need to talk. Otherwise, we're just going to use the chat function today. Hello, good afternoon. Yes, Addie, it is being recorded, and I will talk about how you guys can access the recording. Hi, Benita. What time do you think the webinar is scheduled to be an hour and a half? So we're going to go ahead and get started just out of respect for everybody's time. It is 12:01, and we expect this to finish up around 1:30, and there will be time for questions at the end. So good afternoon, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. I answered some of these questions that I saw in the chat already. So this The content of this webinar is geared towards professionals. However, if you have a child who's making this transition and you're joining this webinar as a family member, there will be lots of information in here that we hope that you will find helpful. But I did want to go ahead and advertise that my colleague, actually, Christina Trujillo-Stevens, is doing a webinar on this same topic, but geared towards families. And that's going to be on February 22nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And there is a live link there where you can register. If you are on our listserv, that should have gone out and will also be advertised on our Facebook page. And you can register also through our website. It'll be on our events calendar coming up. If everybody could please put questions in the chat, because everybody's muted upon entry just because of the number of people, participants that are in here. And we welcome questions. We definitely will have time for questions at the end for sure. But just in the interest of time, we do ask that you hold your questions until the end, unless you have a question that you really just need to ask for clarification so you can understand what's currently being talked about. And you can type it in the chat. We have Terry Layton who will be monitoring that for us so we can get that, or you can raise your hand. Either one would be fine. This webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And that's a live link to our YouTube channel. It'll take just a couple of days to get it up there, but it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, hopefully by Monday. But we'll definitely let you know. And in a follow-up email that will go out, I will also send the link to the YouTube channel in that. We will email out a certificate of attendance for this, and we will also email out the PDF of the slides that has all the live links that you'll see, because there are lots of links in this presentation, and we share lots of things. So you will be provided all of that. Okay, so our objectives for today. After participating in this workshop, we hope that you will be able to identify why families might be stressed or worried about early childhood transitions, especially this transition from early intervention services to preschool special education services. We hope that you'll be able to describe strategies to support diverse families during this transition, and that you'll also be able to list resources and tools that will aid you and families in navigating early childhood transitions. A little bit about ECAC. We hope that you've heard of ECAC before. I do know that we have people registered from out of state. So ECAC, or the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, we are nonprofit and we're dedicated to improving the lives of all children, but we do have a special focus and emphasis on children and youth with special healthcare needs and disabilities. Our organization provides support, education, and training to youth and professionals and families on all kinds of topics, from special education to family engagement, to community resources, and a whole lot more. And you can check out on our website all of our different materials and all of our webinars and things that we offer. Our organization is a family-led organization, and more than 85% of our staff are parents of children with special health care needs or disabilities. We are North Carolina's Parent Training and Information Center, or PTI. Every state has a Parent Training and Information Center that focuses on providing support to families and professionals around special education in their state. And we have had the honor of being North Carolina's PTI for over 30 years. We have a few other initiatives and projects, including the Preschool Development Grant, which is the grant that I work under, as well as my colleague, Christina. NC State Improvement Project with funding from DPI and the Deafblind Project. And you can see more information about ECAC and about all of our different funding sources and projects through that link. We finished very recently, I think it was in the fall, a Discovering ECAC video. It's only about 6 minutes long, but it's a really great way to introduce yourself or colleagues or families to our organization. Okay, so who are we? My name is Christy Moore, and I'm the Early Intervention Project Coordinator with the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, and those are my two kiddos. I have one daughter who is 11 and another one who is 16, so I'm like right in the throes of like puberty and teenagehood, and both of my children have disabilities or special health care needs. And now I'll let Erin introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Erin Kreitz. I am a single mom of a very rambunctious and inquisitive, almost 4-year-old. She does have special needs as well, and I am a part of the Family Advisory Board with ECAC.
And I'm very honored to be presenting with Erin today. Okay, so first off, we have a poll question. Erin, you want to go ahead?
So first, we wanted to know, what is your overall comfort level with supporting families through the transition from early intervention to special education preschool services? And we'll have, Terry's going to help us with the poll.
Yep, you should see a window pop up. And I believe that this will work only on a computer, right, Terry? I believe if you're participating on a phone that you won't see the poll pop up. Is that true?
That's true, and possibly not tablets either. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Okay. All right, people are answering. Okay. Got about 70% who have participated. It's fun to watch all the little bars move. Terry, I think somebody might have raised their hand, but then it disappeared. So I don't know if that was an accident. All right, still going. All right.
Looks like she took her hand back down, but if you're not able to participate in the poll, yet you'd like to tell us your comfort level, you can actually write that in the chat. Go ahead and say the options are not at all comfortable, slightly comfortable, somewhat comfortable, mostly comfortable, or completely comfortable. So if you wanted to participate and you don't have that capability on your device, you can just type it into the chat. And it looks like we've stopped at about 88% participated. So if you'd like, I can show you the results.
Yep, if you would, please.
There we go.
Okay, so it looks like 47%, most of you are mostly comfortable. That's good. That's good. Doing about 24% somewhat comfortable and 18 completely comfortable. Good. Slightly comfortable. We do have a few that are not at all comfortable. So good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those results, Terry. We hope that today this is able to increase for you. And if you are completely comfortable now, hopefully after today, you at least learn something new that you can use. So that's our hope.
Okay, before we dive in, we wanted to take a moment to really stop and talk about feelings. I love this graphic. As a parent and as a former special educator, it is very often, sometimes we have our children that will react in certain ways, often anger. And it's important to remember that just like children, adults don't necessarily mean anger when it's expressed that way. And this visual shows that on the outside, that top of the iceberg, you can see that it comes across, the feeling is initially anger, but underneath the water, there are so many other emotions that could be going on: guilt, embarrassment, grief, feeling overwhelmed, stressed, depressed, lonely, offended, all sorts of other feelings that are kind of under the surface. And we want to acknowledge that families' feelings and emotions come along with them along this transition. And they play a big role in how information is delivered, received, and processed. So as many of you, I'm sure, have experienced at some point a family or a parent who maybe didn't seem very happy about the process. And this could be one of the reasons why, is that they're dealing with some of these other underlying emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
Now we want for you to think about a time where you felt nervous about a change or process. It could be something like starting a new job, moving to a new place, having a child, or a medical procedure. We'd like you to take the time to tell us in the chat, did anything happen or not happen that made you feel uncomfortable or nervous about this change? And what are some things that would have or did make you feel more comfortable about the change or process? Give it a few minutes.
So how did you feel? Was there anything, think about, a lot of people kind of liken it, maybe, okay, having as many details as possible. So I know what to expect for sure. Knowing what to expect, help me feel more comfortable, having good information.
Mhm.
Wow, they're all coming in now.
Communication,
Great.
anxiety, fear of not knowing, having as much information as possible. Yes.
Being
Feeling
guided through the
heard.
process leads my anxiety. Details help.
Mhm.
I am that kind of person. I'm the
Yes.
kind of person that wants the details.
Yes.
Some don't.
Having people you could contact as resources, emotional support.
Without opportunities to ask lots of questions, I felt scared. Yes. Well, I'm a parent on here when my child was diagnosed with autism. As a parent, I attended my first Iep meeting. It was very scary because I didn't have the knowledge then that I have now. The word scary is something that pops up a lot regarding Iep meetings that we hear a lot. Feeling heard helped. Solid relationships with the people. Yes, facilitating the change. That is so important, to have good relationships and to feel comfortable with the people who are facilitating the change. Absolutely. Nervous, fear to speak up, not knowing anything. Yeah, because, a lot of times people say, do you have any questions? And then you clam up. And it's maybe not because you don't have any questions, but because you're processing, or you don't want to sound dumb, or like you don't know what's going on. For sure. Having people I could contact as resources. Anxiety when there's not enough information. The unknown is super scary, right? Helps feeling welcome and heard. Having to go to court by yourself, having anxiety with what the judge was going to say and do, scared to stand up against my, yeah. Cindy, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. Not using terms that I was familiar with. Yes. Even as a background coming from someone who, like in this particular scenario, I was a special educator for several years and still coming into the process as a parent with the acronyms and terms I didn't know was very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power, strong arm. Yes, I felt more comfortable if I know what I'm listening or speaking about, for sure. Yep. Starting this new job, uncomfortable. I didn't feel I was on the same page with other professionals. Yeah. Very comfortable. I can talk through my decisions and choices with a colleague. Yes, I am one of those people that needs to talk through things. Absolutely, to process. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Talking with someone who has gone through the same situation. That's definitely key.
Susan, thank you. Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Being able to trust the expertise of the professionals. For sure, you are putting your trust in them. Terms. Had a great friend that assisted me that had been through it. Having somebody there who's been through it, for sure. These are all so great.
Yes.
Okay. We are trust issues. Yeah, Susan, thank you for sharing that. Perfect. Okay. Well, we are definitely going to save the chat because there's lots of good examples here. Yes. But keeping in mind this change. So there's if it's not your world and you're not doing it every day, right? So a heart surgeon is going to be less nervous about doing a heart surgery than, let's say, if you're going in for heart surgery, right? Because it's not your everyday thing. So this transition doesn't happen every day. Parents and kids don't experience this transition every day. So it's very new to them and it can be very scary. And they are putting their trust in you to help guide them and to hear that it's going to be okay and to help prepare them. So we are focusing on feelings a lot in the beginning, just so everybody can understand where families might be coming from. Okay, so this transition is a physical one. So they're going to be physically, probably physically moving from one location, whether it's home or a different, preschool setting or a home daycare setting, whatever, to probably a new building. And they're also going to be making physical transitions within that building to different rooms and things, in that building, or maybe going with a related service provider into a different space. So transition can be the physical movement from one place to another. And getting used to that and making sure that, you're addressing that piece of the change by getting to know, what are ways that the children and the parents can get to know the new physical setting. But transition is so much more than just changing that physical location. A lot of preparation really needs to happen for both the parents and for the children around that social transition that's going to happen. Learning new rules and new behaviors and new expectations is really big. Adjusting to a new peer group. They could be going into this classroom or being around these children that they don't know any of them. And that can be really hard. And also, not knowing the new adults that are going to be in charge, and that these children are putting their trust in these new adults and new teachers and new therapists to keep them safe and make sure that they're going to be comfortable and that their needs can be met, whether they're emotional or that they're hungry or that they're cold. Putting that kind of trust into a new adult really quickly can be very nerve-wracking. And also, and probably the biggest thing for my daughter, my youngest, is autistic, and the sensory issues, even now when she's 11, that's been a really, really big challenge on our end, is her getting used to all of the new sensory experiences that are in school, even moving from grade level to grade level. They're different. So that's also something that, needs to be on everyone's radar, not just that physical transition, but also preparing for that social transition that's coming up.
It's important to keep in mind that transition is a big change for parents as well. Not only are they factoring in all the things that will be changing physically, emotionally, socially for their children, but they're also learning who to meet, communicating with new people in new environments, especially when it comes from shifting schools. They would have to learn a whole new set of people within the classroom, administration, all the support personnel, learning new school rules and policies. This could be especially overwhelming and difficult if, say, you have children in a few different school settings. So you have to learn not only the one school for this new child transitioning in preschool, but other possible older siblings. Learning a whole new language of special education that comes with evaluations, curriculums, different diagnosis, especially when you're going through from early intervention into the preschool setting. It could be the first time that they're looking at a diagnosis and learning all new acronyms there, which is one reason it's always so important to make sure that you're trying to use the actual name and not just a shortened version acronym. It can be very easy when it's something, as Christy mentioned, it's something that we do day to day, but for a parent, it's a whole new language. It's just something they're starting to learn. They're also excited for their child to grow up and move on to the next level, but they also could have some worries and fears about how they will feel, how their children will feel. So many times as parents, we focus so much on how our children are experiencing things that we don't take the time to step back and really notice how we are feeling about the changes and giving ourselves the space to process through how we're feeling and acknowledging that those feelings are okay. And then really keeping in mind, this is the child that they have fought for and watched struggle oftentimes since birth. And these transitions, as we mentioned, can bring a variety of big feelings. Okay. Now we have another poll question, and we'd like to know, what is your comfort level with helping families process these emotions that they may be feeling during this transition?
All right, so you should have seen the poll question pop up. So if you're working with a parent, a family, and they're visibly frustrated or very quiet, not talking, or if they're crying, what's your comfort level with helping them through that? Okay, I've got some results coming in. 75% so far. Give it just another minute. Okay. All right, it seems to be holding still. Terry, you want to go ahead and share the results? Okay, so we see that most of you, 41%, are mostly comfortable. That's good. That's good because it's a crucial role that you guys have in this transition. Completely comfortable, 13. Good for you, because I'm often caught off guard by people's emotions sometimes, and I have to think about it for a minute. What's the best way to support this person? Somewhat comfortable, 33%, slightly comfortable, 13%. Nobody is not at all comfortable. So that's good. That's good. Well, we hope, Terry, you can stop sharing. Okay, thank you. We hope that your comfort level increases a little bit, with just some of the things to keep in mind. And a lot of this probably won't be anything new. It's just something that, things that we're calling your attention to kind of keep in mind.
Yes. So families, as we mentioned, are likely processing many complex emotions. Parents can feel overwhelmed by information, especially if given verbally. Some people do really well with verbal, others auditory wise, they don't necessarily. It can become overwhelming taking in too much information at once. Many may still be exploring a diagnosis or may have just received one or many diagnoses. They may feel stressed, and stress can cloud thinking and cause a lack of patience, short tempers, and ultimately can result in anger. Parents may also be going through a mourning process and grieving the loss of the childhood, the child that they thought they were going to have, and taking on this new diagnosis and what it all can mean for not only their child, but also their family. They may also be going, it's important to remember that any negative emotions towards you is probably not personally at you. It's more taken out of context, and it's during the process. And remembering that at the end of the day, everything is very different when it's your child. For us as professionals, it can be just another student within the classroom, but taking back for a moment and thinking about what if this was your child, and how would you be feeling if this was your child? As professionals, we must read the parent and adjust the delivery of information as needed. It's always important to acknowledge and validate the feelings that parents are having. I hear that you are frustrated. It seems that you are very overwhelmed with this, and just validating that, because oftentimes, as we saw in the chat, a lot of us, that's what we need when we're going through a new transition, a new scenario. We need to know that we are being heard. And acknowledgement and validation of feelings must happen before parents will be able to process new information.
Yeah, because that acknowledgement and validation of feelings kind of gives parents permission then almost to feel comfortable to ask questions and feel comfortable to maybe share, why they're scared or how they're feeling, or maybe some additional needs that they have where they might not have disclosed that before if they didn't feel comfortable. So helping families process different emotions. So these are just some key things that you can remember noticing them. So, paying attention, you're going to have the whole spectrum of families you're working with, right? The ones that are noticeably upset, right? Where they're crying, they've got the tissues, or they're yelling, or they're, freaking out a little bit first, because, some of us do that. And they're real easy to notice, right? And then it's easy to acknowledge. But the quiet ones, really just paying attention to getting in tune, like not getting lost in the job duties of just making sure you're sharing what you're supposed to share, and really taking the time to kind of check in. Acknowledging them, that can be as simple as, how are you feeling about this? Or if it's obvious, I see that you look like you're feeling sad or you're feeling frustrated. Welcome them to talk about it, validating those emotions, telling them it's totally normal to feel anxious. It's totally normal to feel this way, and that you understand, and that it's common, and that it happens. But also that piece where, I had a child with developmental concerns. She didn't have a diagnosis for more than 5 years. So we were kind of in this limbo space, right? Where I didn't really know what was wrong. Lots of different things were being thrown out there. And she was either had a stroke, or wasn't going to walk ever, or was going to walk, or was, there was all these things that were being thrown around. I was terrified at the thought of this child going to preschool at 3, like totally mortified. But I had somebody from a family support organization that really encouraged me to believe in her, and to be confident, and to presume competence, And that like has stuck with me for every new stage that we come to, like making sure that I'm confident in her ability and that she has potential for success. And that as scary as it is to me, and as scary as the next thing might be to her, to push her and to motivate her and to believe in her, because that's just what you do for your kids. That is what you do. And then offering support and resources, which at the end of this presentation, we have lots of resources linked that you can use both for yourself and for families. There's a couple of articles linked down there under the picture that just explain a little bit in more detail about emotional validation and step-by-step guide on how to do that, because we recognize that might not come comfortable for people naturally. So those are some pretty good articles around how you can do that.
Christy, I'd like to call out, this is Terry, I'd like to call out one of the comments from the chat box from Barbara. She said that she used to tell parents, I understand, but until you have your own children and you go through these things, you can't really understand. So that's an important thing, I think, for some service providers to understand that if you've not gone through this, you can have all the empathy in the world for the family that you're serving. But until you really walk in those shoes, it's hard for you to understand what we're really going through. So you just, I think, use that phrase kind of sparingly at times because some families are just a little salty still with receiving diagnoses, and it can rub the wrong way.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you called that out. And just real quick before Erin shares her story, that's so important. Thank you so much, Terry, for noticing that and saying that out loud. You know, empathy is important, and if you can relate, do, and sharing a personal story can help with that validation and that connection. But just make sure that it makes sense and that it's relevant. I was working with a family one time whose child was being bullied for wearing leg braces and walking funny is what she was being picked on for. And she said that she was talking with just some other parents in the class. They were on a field trip. And another parent said that she totally understood because her child was getting bullied for having braces, like on her teeth. And the mom said, the mom of the child with cerebral palsy had braces on her legs, just kind of stared at her for a minute and was thinking, did you really just make that comparison? Because it's not the same. But anyway, very good point. Very good point. Until you've walked in those shoes, you just really don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Erin.
No, yes, I'm reading more. Some more people are typing in the chat. I wanted to call out, Cheryl said, yes, saying that I hear you, you make sense to me is definitely something that I try to do, because you're right. It's not always something that I have we don't always have direct experience. So I'm going to share a little bit about our family's experience. From a parent's perspective, having gone through the transition from early intervention to preschool services in the last year. So starting from very early, this is my only child. I remember as a special educator, I always thought I would notice all these things and I would pay special attention to progress and all the developmental stages once I had a child. And it started off that way around 4 months. My daughter was 4 months old. I separated from her father, and taking that, I know a few have mentioned in the chat, like going through a divorce, going through a separation, and having that being a scary experience. It was a very overwhelming experience that then shifted my entire perspective of the parents from I'm going to focus on her development and her growth to now I need to worry about safety. Now I need to make sure that everything I'm doing is by the books, on point, because I don't want to lose custody of my child. And that added stress, I feel like, may have clouded my judgment in terms of watching for different developmental signs. We did not actually have any issues until we went to our 18-month well check. Thankfully, we had an amazing pediatrician that happened to be asking questions and asked how many words she could say. And me, at her being 18 months, we had just gone through a bout of worrying about anemia. I was kind of caught off guard. And I said, well, she can say 2 words. She says mama and she says egg, because at that point in time, my daughter ate egg every single morning for breakfast. And the pediatrician, and I thought nothing of it. And the pediatrician said, well, that's a little lower on the lower ends of what we want to see at this age. You know, we could wait until she hits 2 years and we could then talk about potentially looking at speech. And I immediately said, no, I don't want to wait. Again, my background as a teacher and as an elementary teacher, I know how important it is coming from an early intervention standpoint. The more support in the beginning, the better. So I went ahead and we started the process with early intervention, which here in North Carolina is through our CDSA offices. And we thankfully were able to go through, get assessments done, and we started early intervention speech in home just a few short months later. When March of 2020 rolled around, as many of you know, everything shut down due to the pandemic. And this meant that our early intervention services, where our therapists would come in home, stopped. And of course, it was just, oh, it'll take a few weeks sort of thing. And so her therapist and I were talking back and forth via text. I would run by the office, which wasn't that far away from our house, grab some items, and I continued as normal. And I just started implementing things. But as many of you know, it continued. And early intervention was unable to do anything virtually. So we were basically left on our own, except for me consulting with our speech therapist. And I look back and I'm so very grateful that I went ahead with my gut at 18 months and said, let's go ahead and start speech, because had I waited till she turned 2, her birthday is March 2nd. She wouldn't have gotten any in-person services had I waited because of the pandemic. During this process, because it was just me, I relied heavily on our speech therapist for insights. She was amazing and listening when I voiced concerns. From the very beginning, I told her, I feel like there's a processing delay. I think there's a processing thing. And nobody else listened to me except her. So as we neared the 2.5-year mark, where many, as you know, that's when the transition process starts for early intervention. You start getting prepared to go to the preschool setting. She told me, I think you should go see a neurologist. I think you're right. I think there's something there. You should definitely pursue it. Follow your gut. And so we started the process almost simultaneously. We saw a neurologist and we started working with our support coordinator through CDSA to transition to the preschool coordinator in our district. So that was a lot, especially coming from a single working parent standpoint. I was juggling my job. My daughter had just started a private daycare 5 days a week to help hopefully boost some of her social skills and her speech. And then I was also scheduling all these doctor's appointments to try and see a specialist. Where we are located in the state of North Carolina, we are not near a very large city. So for us, in order to get anything specialized, we have to drive an hour to an hour and a half north into Virginia to get any sort of help. So trying to navigate all of those appointments and trying to make sure she didn't miss school, and so I didn't miss work, was a very stressful time. On top of that, with our transition process, we switched support coordinators right as the process started. So our original support coordinator got a brand new caseload. And so we were with this new coordinator who we had no established relationship with, and everything kind of just fell apart, I felt like. And I felt that I was having to start leading, like calling the school, hey, can I speak to the preschool coordinator? Can I make sure, I was getting increasingly stressed as time ticked down that nobody was listening to me. Nobody was telling me what sort of meetings were supposed to be happening. Nobody had scheduled any meetings for an IEP. And I was doing all of this legwork on my own to get all of this testing done, but then I wasn't seeing anything no communication was coming through from the school district. And I was very concerned about that. And so one of the big takeaways that I always mention when I do talk to professionals is, even if you're not able to do anything, just communicating back to the families like, hey, we're kind of in a hold pattern. We can't start the meeting right yet because of the window of time, but we do have all of the information, because as parents, we get very nervous. I want to have everything in a row so that when it comes time for meetings, I didn't want to be the reason anything was delayed. Because my daughter's birthday is early March, we ran into our 90-day transition process was over the Christmas holiday. And so nothing happened until early January. And then it was like, hey, can you meet in 2 days time and do the IEP meeting and do the referral meeting? And I couldn't do that because of my own work schedule. But we were ultimately able to get through all of our testing. We brought in our testing for the IEP meetings. One of the things I utilized that I have recommended to all other parents that are going through the process is I brought in a family member who knew my daughter, who knew our situation, and they sat in on the meeting with me, every single meeting that we had, just to be another observer and someone who could ask questions or who could come back to me afterwards and process through the situation, the experience with me, because you don't think about it, and especially I was like, I'm a special educator. I know I know a good amount. I will know what questions to ask. But you get into the meeting, and as Christy mentioned, you kind of just, your mind blanks and you don't think of any questions. And this family member was able to kind of nudge me through a chat and I told them for the second meeting, I said, please just ask whatever questions that come up, because I'm not going to think of them. I'm very much in a parent mindset. And so having that other person there to experience this transition, these meetings, this process was very key to me, because I needed someone to be able to process it with afterwards. She did get her diagnosis and got her IEP. And so we transitioned to preschool services being given out at her private daycare earlier in March of 2021. So we're almost to 1 year. She'll be 4 next month. And it has been, since then, it's been a very open process of, okay, we set up therapies. These are the therapists that come out. They come out to her school. And just, I've opened the dialogue of making sure that we have an open communication line between her teachers, between her therapist. We also have private therapy that we go to, again, to Virginia for, because I wanted something more specialized. Her diagnosis is sensory processing disorder, and she's also on the autism spectrum. So I wanted someone that could specialize in sensory processing to meet her needs. Once, and just meet with her one-on-one and be able to really work with things, and then show me as a parent, hey, these are some things that you can do. So some of the really big key takeaways are remembering that you don't always have the full picture. When a parent comes in, I would, as most moms will, try to come in acting as if we have it all together. We have all of our ducks in a row, bringing any questions that I have, but on the inside, I was struggling. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anything. I was trying to learn as much as I possibly could, while also on some level grieving this change, this process, this transition of, okay, life's going to look a little bit different for us than what I thought it was going to look like, mainly from a parenting standpoint of how I had to really shift how I was going to parent my child, because of taking into consideration her speech delays and her sensory processing needs. Also, again, communication is key. The people that communicated with me, like our speech therapist from early intervention, who at almost 4 years old, we still communicate with her, because I loved being able to send her videos to see the progress, because she saw us at the very earliest when my daughter was barely speaking, was barely making signs, and was just constantly tantruming because she had no way to communicate. So communicating with the providers, communicating with the parents, as we mentioned, saying, I hear you, validating the feelings. You may not understand every situation and family that comes through, but really letting them know that you hear them is so very, very important. And as Christy mentioned, I'm very much in the details. Over-explain it to me, give me, as much information as possible, and then check in like, hey, do you have any questions? Or giving an email address. Hey, if you ever have questions, send me an email. I'm more than likely going to come up with a laundry list of questions that I have later, and I will email them to you in the middle of the night because they are burning. And then having someone there to respond was so very helpful, because again, it proved that communication, that they were willing to actually back that up and be present and and answer the questions that I might have. And this, because of all this, so because of the process for our transition, I actually came to ECAC after the fact. I had our support coordinator saw how involved I was and how many questions I had, and how, with the help of the family member, brought up key points that we said, well, this isn't necessarily, I think you're missing a part, or this legally isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And so our support coordinator introduced me to ECAC by saying, well, they have a family advisory board. You seem very vocal and involved. I think you would be a great asset. And so that's how I was introduced to ECAC. And I see some, oh no, I saw Anna asked the specialist, which kind of specialist my daughter goes to. So we saw a neurologist, and then we now are seeing an occupational therapist who specializes in sensory processing disorder. And that's who she sees once a week for an hour every week.
Thank you, Erin, for sharing that story on the transition, and a lot of your points also resonate with me, because there were similar, minus the pandemic, because ours happened more years ago, because my youngest is 11. But a lot of that, is true, and the amount of support you get just really makes a difference. And, I was one of those people also who wanted all the information and then was overwhelmed by all the information. So I kind of did it to myself, but nevertheless, I wanted it anyway. So these are some quotes. ECAC had done a survey of families who had recently experienced or currently experiencing this transition from early intervention services to preschool services, and pulled a couple of those out and just bolded some words that just really stood out to me, that really spoke to how these folks were feeling at the time, that they felt helpless, that they wish that there was a lot more preparation ahead of time, feeling sick, overwhelmed, frustrated. In the last quote, you'll see the word scary again. That's one we get a whole lot about Iep meetings and about this transition. And it is scary. But in this quote, you can see that the coordinator went to the Iep meeting with this mom, and that she was asking questions that she didn't even think to ask. So just having that was really great. So doing something as simple, like, I don't know if this EI coordinator even knew how much of an impact she was having just by being there and going and asking these questions, but just being that support, because not everybody knows, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, that they can bring somebody to these meetings. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So these are some questions that we commonly get around this transition. And you're going to run into the whole spectrum of parents. You're going to run into the ones that have a ton of questions, and you're thinking, if this person asks me one more question, I'm going to lose it. But that's good. And that's how they're processing this, and they're gathering information, and you answer them and you give them resources and you move on. But then you're going to have those families who maybe aren't asking questions, or maybe aren't asking a lot of questions. And it's those parents, those families sometimes that I really feel like might need a little bit more prompting, because just because they're not asking questions doesn't mean they don't have questions, and doesn't mean that they don't need that information. They might not be asking questions because they're nervous, because they're overwhelmed, because they're processing, or maybe sometimes it's just because they don't want to sound dumb, or they're afraid that they're going to come off as like just being totally clueless, and they don't want to do that. Or maybe even sometimes culturally, like you don't ask questions of people who are in these positions, right? You just trust the professional and you move along, and they'll tell you everything you need to know. You don't ask questions, you just accept it and move along. So doing something where you could write down questions that you commonly get, or even using some of these. And if a parent, family doesn't have a lot of questions, maybe using some of these as prompts, saying, or do you have any questions like similar to this, or here, take this with you. And if you need any of these answered, feel free to contact me, or I can provide you resources or people to talk to, around these different questions. But just really making sure, sometimes just asking any questions or do you have any questions? And then, saying no. Sometimes that just isn't enough, and people need prompts and to know that their questions are welcomed.
Something that stuck with me, and I wanted something you pointed out, Christy, when I had a medical procedure done when I was pregnant, I was already very worried because I was pregnant and then having to have this procedure done. And I remember it was my first time at the doctor's appointment or the doctor's office. I'd never met this doctor before. I walked in and I remember her asking me, how do you learn the best? Do you learn best by visuals? Do you learn best by, having me explain it to you verbally? What, do you want a mirror so you can see what's being done for this procedure? And I remember very adamantly saying, I do not learn visually in that way. Like, I don't want that. But I said I learned auditorily. And she made a point of walking through every single step of this procedure, letting me know ahead of time, okay, this is what we're going to do. And as she did each step, telling me, okay, this is what's happening next. And it's something that's always stuck with me because especially as educators, we think about learning styles and we learn about them in school and all sorts of trainings. And then we have to go and apply them once we're in the classroom setting. And it's something to consider too. We don't lose our learning styles as we grow up and become adults. We still have those learning styles. So sometimes asking those, maybe asking the family, like, how do you learn best? So that you have a better idea of ways to present the information. And you'll see further along in our presentation, we give you some different options and ways to structure the information so it's not as overwhelming to families. But understanding that families come from all different walks of life, cultural, educational, trauma, unmet needs, family makeups, not the things that you're going to see when the family shows up in your office or shows up for a virtual meeting. So really remembering that you're not getting the full picture and welcoming families to stop and ask for clarification during conversations. It can be, if you have a parent like myself that had tons of questions, it can seem overwhelming, but as Christy mentioned, it is really comes from a place of that is how we are processing. And that way we have that information so we can go back later, or we might think of a question later and think, oh, but I already had that answered. And so it's something that it's a way to soothe our need for information. And sometimes it can also soothe our anxiety. I know for me, not having answers makes me stress more. So remembering that sometimes families do need that extra information so that they can really process what's going on. Hearing their concerns, validating their feelings, providing facts and information with care, and remembering that different people, again, need different levels and types of support. Some families will come in and have thoroughly researched everything and know exactly by the books everything that's going on, whereas other families have no idea and are just getting started and may need additional support. So trying to use discernment when you're working with families, what it is you think they might need. And again, asking, what is it that you might need? How do you learn best? And then as always, offering to make connections to preschool coordinators, to teachers, other parent support organizations. Something that I know across North Carolina, and it was something I just learned about like not even 2 weeks ago, is there's something called Circle of Parents, and those are family groups. There are support groups for families of children with health and special needs. And just having that as an option for families and saying, here's a resource for you if you want to join them, because you might find someone else that is going through the same exact scenario and they can relate. They can say, oh, I totally understand that. And it can really make the process, this whole transition process, feel less lonely.
Yeah, David, I want to echo what you just said, Erin, for sure, because that's one of the big things that I think helps parents who are going through anything related to their child. You find others who have just gone through it, who are going through it, or can relate to you on that personal experience. Really, just it adds. It's even just finding somebody else that feels the same way you do. It's almost just a relief. It's very strange to to understand. It is. So some additional strategies for supporting families. So this a big thing that we talked about earlier, letting them know that they can invite anyone that they'd like to the meeting, to the Iep meeting, to their meetings. Could be a current therapist, childcare provider, grandparents. It doesn't have to be a special education advocate. When I was a parent educator and took calls a lot, I heard a lot that they didn't bring anybody to IEP meetings because they thought that they could only bring that the extra person had to be like some sort of advocate, and they couldn't afford one. So they didn't think they could bring anybody else. And then just explaining to them, this extra person can be anybody, just there for support to make you feel more comfortable. It doesn't have to be anybody that's any kind of expert in this transition or with IEPs. It can be just an extra set of ears, somebody who can speak to maybe the needs of the child, or maybe even the needs of the parent that's going through the transition. So it can be anybody, an extra set of ears who can just maybe hear things that you missed. Even I need somebody to go to IEP meetings with me, because again, I'm in that mom role, and I get that mom brain and that mom head, and I need other people there to hear things and to ask questions. Sharing information and resources on the difference between an IFSP and an IEP. They're very different, right? So one's based on the needs of the child and family. The other one's based really on the academic and functional and social needs of the child. They are very different, and there's a good resource at the end at those presentation that's linked on that difference. And then resources on the IEP process basics. So the IEP process has a bad rap. It's scary. I don't know anybody that actually thoroughly enjoys it on either end, going through it and feels completely confident in the whole thing, and then it's working out perfectly. But we do have, ECAC has lots of IEP resources, from webinars and trainings to the IEP roadmap, which I'll share a little bit later. All kinds of different links to help you maybe understand them a little better as professionals, but also to share with families. And this is a big thing that I, recently learned from talking with some preschool coordinators is one of the big surprises for families is they a lot thought that, if they qualified for early intervention services, that was an automatic transition to receive preschool special education services. And that's not the case. And maybe letting families know ahead of time, where they can plan, because sometimes planning for next steps, if you have in your head that your child's going to preschool and you make plans for your personal life around that belief or that assumption, that can come crashing down really quickly, with wait lists being as long as they are, and just really knowing what the other options are in the community would be really helpful, knowing that information ahead of time. And also providing resources and tools to help families prepare for this transition, which we hope you will find all the ones linked here at the end very useful. We do have lots of resources linked here at the end.
And so what can we do to help families prepare for the meetings? Encouraging families to talk to service providers about their child's progress and successful strategies that they used. Being involved in any sort of planning meetings, anything with your not only pediatricians, but if you also have different therapists, whether it's privately or through early intervention. I know I talked as much as I possibly could to gain a better picture of, okay, this is where she is. Can you tell me in plain terms where my child is? So I know, because for us, our transition meeting was virtual. It was via Zoom, and our speech therapist was not able to attend. So I was there on my own trying to explain, this is what it looks like on paper, but this is also what she's doing, things that I'm concerned about and I'm seeing that she's doing. Compiling information that they want to share, such as medical reports, information from outside services, such as those special therapies, services that their child has received, videos or photos of their child, in what we call compiling it in a care notebook. I have a binder that I brought that I just started to compile while we were going through early intervention. Anytime our therapist gave us anything that was emailed to me, I put it in there. I handouts, put it in there just so I could start compiling it. And then I would also note things in emails. Hey, I'm going to send you an email. This is something that I'm seeing. Do you have information on it? And then printing that off and putting it in the notebook so that I had kind of my own personal record that I could bring into meetings. And then, as many of us have mentioned in the chat, like writing down all the questions, encourage them to write down any questions. I would start on my phone, I had a memo pad note that was just questions as I was falling asleep at night and I couldn't fall asleep because I was anxiously going through what type of questions. I would write it down there. So at least I knew that it was out of my head and maybe I could get some more sleep tonight, but also because I could then take that information into the meeting or write it down in an email the next morning so that I could get that question answered.
So this is Terry. There was a comment in the chat regarding, it was from Nicole, and she said that she's a special needs parent, a SPED advocate, and a former educator, and she has perspectives from all the sides of the table. She thinks it might be helpful if we were to share what professionals and advocates not do so that communication and interaction with the school stay positive and most importantly, effective for the student's sake. So if you have first perspectives on that, Christy and Aaron, it might be.
Sure.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we do. And that's something that we can definitely comment on at the end. I just want to make sure we have enough time to get through this, but absolutely, you know, that is a great point, because we're talking about a lot of the do's. And there are a lot of don'ts. But yes, we will definitely, Terry, remind me to address that at the end during the question session. Thank you.
And this is just a continuation showing more things that we suggest that families can do to prepare for meetings. Again, bringing that care notebook of any additional testing, evaluations that was not done through the early intervention services, videos, audio clips, anything supporting concerns. Being ready to discuss your child's strengths and challenges. The ECAC has this painting the big picture, which when you get the PDF deck, you can link to. And this addresses that area that I saw Barbara made a comment in the chat about how it's so hard to look at that vision of the future. We tend to focus so much as parents when we go into these meetings. And I remember being asked, like, well, what are your child's strengths? And I had been so focused for like 2 years on everything that she couldn't do that it kind of caught me off guard. Like, I don't know what are her strengths, and really struggling in the moment. So the painting the big picture is something that you can give families prior to the start of all of the meetings so that it aligns perfectly. Once you'll see it later on the presentation, how it aligns perfectly to those areas of what the IEP is going to address, what they're going to ask for family input of what are their strengths? What is your vision? What are your goals as the parent and the family for your child going through this IEP program? Again, deciding who, if anyone, is coming to the meeting with you. Again, it cannot be stressed enough. It does not have to be someone who, as a professional, it can just be a family member or a friend that knows the situation, someone there to support you, to support the family as they go through the process, bringing questions about the process, what to expect. And then we kind of wanted to open up really quickly. What else have you done? How else would you recommend parents prepare for meetings? What are some things that maybe we haven't addressed yet so far in the presentation that you do recommend that parents do to prepare?
Well, I would just say earlier on, Jessica commented that parents could bring a paper with their questions on it written down ahead of time. And I know that Jessica is a family member who speaks Spanish. So if she has a translator, of course, she would write her questions in Spanish and the translator would be translating those questions for her. So I wanted to make that point at this point. And yeah, and then I see Cheryl says that she likes to go to the IEP meeting as a coordinator because if she knows the parents well enough, she can prompt questions in the conversation with the LEA. And so that's a good idea. And oh, wow, they're coming in fast and furious. Becky says, have someone there to take notes for you. As a parent, all new information would go in one ear and out the other. Yep, you're right. And Wilma says, I ask the parents to think about their vision for the future ahead of time. And this is something that parents don't usually think about. Yeah. And Christy and Aaron, earlier on, I was chatting with someone in the chat, and she said that in her district, they are not letting anyone else besides the parent into the IEP meetings right now because of COVID. And so what's your reaction to that, and how can they get around that rule, because I'm thinking, that's the LEA's choice to do that, but it kind of goes against
Probably,
the IDEA.
right, yeah, and probably the principal's choice to do that. But, respectfully bringing that up, that they do have, the ability to bring somebody with them if they want. And also, if there's a special circumstance or, something around that, can the meeting then be virtual? I've done my fair share of virtual Iep meetings. And will that, allow for somebody to have somebody extra too? But yeah, if you're not being allowed somebody else to come to the meeting with you, and of course, being respectful and not bringing a whole bunch of people, bringing one other person with you, it's definitely something that you can give us a call about, and we can help you navigate that situation for sure. But just, asking respectfully, that you are able as a parent to bring somebody with you, and that you would like to bring this person, and then that you're looking for support with that, or a way to change the meeting format where you can bring somebody with you.
Yes, definitely. And then let's see, Courtney says, speaking of taking notes, who usually takes minutes in your IEP meetings? She's finding it's challenging to discuss results, respond to questions, etc., and do all of these well.
Yes. So in my child's personal IEP meetings, her special education teacher, IEP case manager, is the one who's taking the notes. So when we're going over evaluations and things, it's the psychologist or the OT or the PT or the speech therapist that's explaining those. Occasionally it will be we have deans at our school, so it'll be the dean who does it when the special education teacher is talking. So the person who's talking is not taking the minutes, or taking the notes or filling in things. But I'm assuming that, due to staffing issues and things like that, that might be a luxury that schools might not have right now. So I'm that's something that definitely could be an issue. The person who asked that, was that somebody who is a special education teacher, or was that somebody who was a parent? Are they, I guess, is the parent taking the notes for their, is that what
I'm
they're
not
referring
sure.
to? Okay.
I'm not sure. Maybe she can tell us, make another comment. And then here's an interesting one that we've heard of before. Barbara says that she's heard of parents recording the meeting because if you bring someone, they can't remember what was said, and it's too overwhelming, too much information, that kind of thing. So you can record the meetings. North Carolina is a one reporter state, so you can do that, but a lot of districts kind of frown upon it. It's usually best to make sure that you let them know ahead of time that you're going to be recording them, just out of a courtesy.
Yeah, you can, but I do not recommend doing it without letting people know.
Yeah.
Period. Okay. All right. Thank you, Terry.
And Courtney says that she is a PT, a physical therapist. So.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. So taking minutes at the same time when you're explaining results, yes, that would be very hard. And if staffing allows, definitely asking for support with that would be obviously best practice if possible. But then again, we're very aware that staffing issues are a big deal right now, and that does impact how these meetings run, unfortunately. Okay, so we're hoping that these next couple of things, these examples are things, so as Aaron mentioned earlier, some people are auditory learners, some people are more visual learners, and some people are both. I'm probably a little bit of both, and I think a lot of people probably fall into that both category, where you like to hear and see things at the same time. I'm hoping that everybody is familiar with this resource, and hopefully you do use it, the Parent's Guide to Infant, Toddler, and Preschool Programs. I like it. It's kind of a long document. It says it's 22 pages. If you count it from cover to end, it's really 26, but it's very information dense, and there are people who are going to need this, and there are people who are going to like this. In here, I especially like, there's a couple things I pointed to. I really like the transition checklist. I think that's very helpful, and it's something that you could actually just kind of pull out and use. There is a section in there to write in information about their child, which is very helpful to format kind of the information that you want to share. but also the document that Aaron spoke of earlier, the Painting the Big Picture tool, which I'm going to show in its entirety coming up, is also a tool that can be used to share that information and to get parents thinking about things ahead of time. And this also speaks to the organization of your child's notebook. So you heard Aaron reference the CARE notebook, which ECAC has a template for a CARE notebook, which we'll share coming up soon. We have it available in English and in Spanish. And this is something that parents can print and physically put in a notebook if they want to help organize all of their child's information that would be helpful for these transitions or for Iep meetings coming up. So some people, you hand them a 26-page information dense document, they're going to go, okay, great, I'm going to look at this later, or they're skim through it and be like, that's a lot. Sometimes people need to see information in a more linear fashion, something simple, similar to this. This is not an official infographic, but we are working on these, and hopefully they will be ready in the next couple of months, and we will share them on our website. We will share them on our Facebook page. So if you don't already like our Facebook page and you're on social media, I encourage you to like it so you can be notified when all of these new resources and tools come out, because we will be having lots of things rolling out in the next couple of months that you can share with families. So this is just something that's real simple. It lets parents know, like, around the child's second birthday, all the way through the third, like a little bit about what's going to happen. It's not a whole lot of information, but it lets them know the basics. And then they know enough to ask, okay, well, what else is going to happen here? Can I have a little bit more information on the next step? So this just kind of helps parents see the big picture of the transition in a more simple way. Now, some people can easily be overwhelmed and just say, you know what, I just want to know what's coming next. That's all I need right now. This is great. I have all this stuff. Just please let me know. Chunk the information for me. Let me know what's coming next. And then you could do something, similar to this. And this is very simply what will happen, when will it happen, where will it happen, who can be there. And this very obviously outlines that anyone in the family who would like to attend for support and to share information can be there. And then what may happen. So of course, these bullets are going to look different depending on, what county you're in or what area, what state you're in also. But having handouts similar to this could be really helpful for some families who just need to know what's going to happen next. So you'll see here, of course, my toolbar is over it, but just real simple: when, where, who, what. Again, just real simple bulleted points about what's going to happen. So the eligibility meeting. So you'll see here, like, something that's important, an important note, like the Iep meeting could actually be one and the same. So you could have the eligibility meeting and go right into the Iep meeting. And for me, that was a surprise. I didn't know that was happening. So a heads up would have been nice because I wasn't able to prepare. So having like little bulleted items like this in here that can maybe help make parents think of some questions and just really be prepared for the possibilities or what could happen. And then this, a couple of bullet points about the Iep meeting, because this is the most scary one, right? And here, you can use these terms that parents are going to see, and just making sure that, that they should have that acronym sheet if you're giving them the guide and things like that. They'll see phrases like area of eligibility, maybe the word functional they're not familiar with. They'll see least restrictive environment, related services. They might not know what all those things are, but breaking information down and giving them something simple like this, they can see those words and be like, okay, can you please explain this to me? And you can share resources you have. And then ECAC also has resources on a lot of these things that we will share. And here, I noted special education resources will be provided, and the Parents' Rights Handbook is going to be provided, but there's lots of other things that you can share with families to prepare for Iep meetings.
And so before we move into this last section, we've been referencing a lot of resources. So that is where we're going to head into next. And we want to know, what is your confidence level regarding your awareness of resources for families that could help them prepare for this transition from early intervention to preschool?
Okay, and Terry's going to launch a poll. There you go. It should be up on your screen now. And this is confidence level regarding your awareness of resources. Okay, somewhat confident, mostly confident, are kind of rallying for the lead here. going back and forth.
And I just want to take a moment to note, I've noticed, thank you for those of you who are honest about saying if you are not very confident or slightly confident. I know from a standpoint of attending my own on my own sets of trainings, wondering like, I don't want to be the one person that says I'm not very confident. And it's so important to recognize that you're not alone. Like, it's okay to be very transparent and say like, hey, I want to learn more. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today.
All right, it looks like we have 100% answer. Do you want to share results? Okay. So somewhat confident right in the middle wins. There's 42%, somewhat confident, and then 34 is mostly, 8 is completely, 10% slightly, and 5% not very. So good, most folks are in the middle, so that's good. So the next section, thank you, Terry. The next section is going to be a little fast and furious because I'm looking at time. But again, all of these resources have links. There are, they're for families and they're for professionals. You can use them either way. I think everybody will find them useful. And if you have any questions about any of these after you get the email with the follow-up materials, please don't hesitate to reach out and send me an email.
And so we put together kind of this diagram visual for sharing with families about kind of when you have those families that come in like, okay, we're doing this, but what else can we do to prepare for preschool? We're waiting for determining what the next step is. And I was one of those parents, and I am still one of those parents every week when we go to therapy or a week that we miss therapy. Okay, what can we work on at home? And so we put together this guide that you can share with families and parents to help answer that question. Like, okay, so here are some basic skills that they're going to be working on in preschool. Some things, depending on different preschools and the different rules and regulations, they may need help learning how to self-dress or how to use the bathroom on their own. And so just giving parents kind of some stepping stones of things that they can do at home or over the summer as they prepare, while still making it fun and still working on some necessary social skills, academic and functional self-help skills.
I just wanted to comment, like a lot of times parents can get so caught up in the academic piece of going to preschool or going to kindergarten, but the functional skills, the self-help skills, the social skills are so foundational, because if they don't have those basics down, confidence goes down and anxiety can go up. And if you have a child that's not confident and full of anxiety, they can't learn. So, and one thing that I want to point out, because this was a surprise to me, my child went to a kindergarten prep program through Teach, where she learned how to ask for help. I didn't realize she didn't know how to ask for help, or that she couldn't ask for help, but she especially had issues with asking for help when she didn't understand something, didn't understand a direction, didn't understand where she was supposed to go, didn't understand the activity. She would just sit there. And I was totally shocked to realize that she didn't really know how to ask for help. So it's something that that program helped me teach her how to ask for help. And now, trust me, she's gotten a whole lot better. But that came as a real shock to me. That functional skill there was something we definitely needed more.
Such a good point.
Sorry, thank you. There was a question in the chat asking if we have this skills list in Spanish.
We don't, because we just created this on a slide, but I'm not saying that we can't. Terry, we can talk about that afterwards.
We sure can. Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was something you did for this presentation or if we had it elsewhere. So
yeah, okay. No, this is literally something that Aaron and I made. So it's not currently in Spanish, but we can definitely talk about doing that. We want to make sure our materials are accessible as possible to everyone. So yeah, it's definitely something that we will talk about and get out there as soon as we can.
Thank you.
All right, and my titles are covered up on my little taskbar as usual, but I'm just going to go from memory here, which is not very good. So these are just some general resources that you can share with families. Understood.org is a website that I use all the time They have great articles. If you've never been on it, please go check it out. They do such a great job of explaining different things related to special education and learning and thinking differences, and just all kinds of topics are on there. Are so helpful. But here specifically, there's some IP resources. The Duke Children's Law Clinic Parents Guide to Special Education is something that I share all the time. It's basically the policy document, that long, stuffy policy document in family-friendly language. It's a great document. I love it. We use it all the time. Obviously, the Department of Public Instruction, Office of Early Learning website. The Pacer Center is a great resource in and of itself, but they have a one-pager that does a good job explaining the difference between an IFSP and an IEP. Again, there's a link to the Parents Guide to the Infant, Toddler, and Preschool programs that we showed you earlier. There's a tips page linked there on how parents can be an effective advocate. And then obviously the very important Learn the Signs, CDC's Learn the Signs, Act Early materials that I can't speak highly enough about. Something I did want to talk about here, because this dawned on me last night and is like an 11 o'clock at night addition to this, is the importance of executive functioning skills. When I was a parent educator, I was taking a whole lot of calls from families almost all the time. A lot of the issues and struggles and difficulties that children had, the root of those problems were in a functional, executive functioning skill deficit. And executive functioning skills are things like working memory, self-control, attention, flexibility, those are just some, there are more. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child has wonderful resources on executive function. There's a link to their guide to it, executive function. In that guide is an activities guide, which is linked right below it, on enhancing executive functioning skills from infancy. It starts at 6 months old through adolescence. And there's a screenshot of what it looks like. You can download the activities guide. This is great for everybody. Please, I encourage you to go check it out. And this is great to talk about executive functioning skills with parents during transition and to pull their attention to it, because I didn't put any executive functioning goals on my child's IEP until she was in 3rd grade. And I feel like if I had known what these were and the name for them and about them a little bit earlier, we could have been working on those basic foundational skills a whole lot earlier. And then here, just a link to Understood. They have a great article on what executive function is. A couple of resources for professionals here. You may be familiar with them. Project Connect has free online modules on these different best practices on inclusion, supporting families during transitions, communication, and family professional partnerships. This toolkit is relatively new, and it recognizes the effects of COVID that it's had on young children, and especially families of color and low resource families. And it focuses on those 2 main areas that you see here: the transition from home or community-based childhood setting to public schools, pre-K and kindergarten, and then transitions into a post-COVID learning environment, both this previous fall and then years follow. That's a great resource to check out. I want to make sure that everybody is familiar with family support organizations in our state. So these are just, there probably are autism societies and other similar support organizations in other states. But for North Carolina, I wanted to highlight these. All 3 of these are statewide. Obviously, this is not all inclusive, but these are just some of the big ones. And if you have a family that you're working with that would like specific support options and organizations for their child's particular disability, give us a call. We can help you with those. I want to highlight Family Support Network. It's kind of a catch-all. For over 5 years, my child didn't have a diagnosis, right? So I didn't have a tribe. I didn't have a place. She didn't have a place to go for support, really. Not the Autism Society, not the Triangle Down Syndrome Network, I think it was at the time. Cerebral palsy, we didn't fit anywhere. So Family Support Network was our catch-all and did a great job supporting our family in a way that we felt comfortable being supported. They do have a parent mentoring program where parents who are ready to take on leadership roles can be trained to be parent mentors. And then they have a parent matching program where parents can call and talk about their situation and kind of what they're dealing with. It can be matched with a veteran parent who has been there, done that, and can just help be that source of support. Whatever kind of support they end up needing. Autism Society of North Carolina has autism resource specialists who can help parents of children with autism navigate resources in their area. They also offer clinical services and support groups. The NC Down Syndrome Alliance, I learned fairly recently about something that they have called the Learning Program. And this is free if parents sign up for the whole program. Check it out on their website. The level 1 learning program is for children who have Down syndrome, so preschool-ish age, all the way to 1st grade. They focus on specific learning item, everything from like reading comprehension or to math skills, to functional skills, to social skills. It really looks like a great program. It used to be done direct instruction in person. Right now it's online. I'm pretty sure that they will move back to that in-person model when it's safe to do so. Here, this is a transition checklist from the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. This is just a self-assessment tool that you can use to kind of see how you're doing navigating these transitions with families. There are other checklists on the other transitions, early childhood transitions, from the hospital to early intervention and from preschool to kindergarten. These are available in English and Spanish. And here are a couple of resources from ECAC. I'm going to go a little bit fast, but I did want to save at least 5 minutes for questions. There's a link there where you can see all of our resources, like the Painting a Big Picture, Student Snapshot, fact sheets. This is a document that's being revised currently, but this is currently on our website. The questions parents can ask about planning for transition. This one is for early intervention to preschool. So this is one of those documents that just helps families with those question prompts. We do Tool Time Tuesdays every Tuesday at noon, where we highlight different tools and resources from our own organization and from other organizations. We go live on Facebook at noon every Tuesday, or you can use that link to register to get the notifications and watch through Zoom. I do want to talk about brand new, very recently out is our Dyslexia Toolkit, which is linked right there, and our Discovering ECAC video, which is a 6-minute video that just introduces our organization and what we offer. Here is the Painting the Big Picture tool. I do want to share that if you would like hard copies mailed to you, you can reach out to me and we can get those to you. Or you can use the link just to print these off yourself or to send the link to families. I really like this tool and used it, gave it to parents when they were preparing for Iep meetings, especially, with the elementary age students, because it helps them think ahead of time. You notice some of these sections, like here, strengths and successes is the first thing they ask for. And a lot like Erin, that was something I didn't really focus on because I was very worried about the challenges and the problems, because that's what we needed to fix. Let's see, next page here. So you can see over here, there is a section for challenges because those need to be addressed. And it asks for the dreams and visions, just like it does on the IEP. That was always hard. It's still hard. It's still hard for me to fill out that section. And then there's sections on some like unusual responses, fears, or recent changes at home, just other things that people might need to know. And this is where I would put on this document that my child vomits and passes out when she hears a fire alarm, because that was very important for the educators to know that she's going to need to be taken outside for fire drills or any other loud noise, because the child will vomit and pass out. And if you don't catch her, she's going to hit her head. So there are all these other little tidbits that need to be shared that this document prompts and allows for parents to share. And here's a link to all of our IEP resources on our website, link to our care notebook template in English and in Spanish. Right here, if you click on this link, it'll take you to our webinar recordings that we have on our website. There are also webinar recordings on our YouTube channel, which was linked in the very beginning of this presentation. Quick glance at the IEP roadmap. This is actually, we took something that DPI did and broke down the Ecac forms, and then their words are in pink. And then we put in notes in yellow and in these text boxes. And we go through the entire IEP with notes about how it should be, how it could be filled out, best practices, and also explaining some of the terminology. And this document's highlighted in the IEP road trip presentation that we do. So these are just some things that are coming down the pike, some additional fact sheets, and then some conferences supporting early childhood professionals. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye on our website and keep an eye on our Facebook page. Our next one is planned for June 2022, and there'll be a couple more later in the year. There are more details to come. Just want to plug our ECAC parent educators. So our parent educators are all children, are all parents of children with disabilities and special healthcare needs. And we provide individualized support to families and professionals on various special education related topics. You can contact a parent educator through that link on our website, or you can call the 1-800 number. and individual assistance is available in English and in Spanish and in other languages upon request. Here's a link to our Facebook page. If you're on social media, I encourage you to go check it out so you can be up to date on all the latest releases from ECAC and special education related news. And our social media lead is really good just about sharing some motivational stuff and sometimes some funny stuff, because sometimes you just have to laugh. Thank you guys so much. We have a really quick, I think 3-question, right, Terry, evaluation that's going to pop up on your screen. I know the last bit of it went a little bit quick, but if you would just fill out that evaluation poll, I would appreciate that so much, because we do work with grant funding and we need this data to be able to continue to bring you materials and presentations such as this. Terry, were you going to say something?
There are 3 questions in the survey, and if you use the toolbar on the side, you can scroll down on the survey.
Okay, great. And while you're filling that, I'm going to start answering some questions that I see. So let's scroll up just a hair.
There were a lot of questions about receiving the slides. Yes, we will send a hard copy, or not a hard copy. We'll send a PDF copy of the slides through email to all of today's attendees. And Christy, remember there was that question about what not to do as a professional in a meeting that we were going to circle back to?
Yes. So a couple things that I did want to say, and please feel free to chime in. Toxic positivity. I'm one of those people that, and Terry knows this, she's my boss. I don't like toxic positivity. So don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. So many other people do this every day and everybody else is fine. I get it. Like I get where that's coming from, but this is my situation. This is how I feel. Like, please don't invalidate feelings by kind of overdoing, hey, you're going to be fine. Kind of like when kids fall down and you're like, don't cry, you're going to be fine. You get over it. Let's go. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. And that can be more harmful than helpful. Also, maybe when you're trying to empathize with the situation, again, just having appropriate personal stories when you're trying to do that. You know, I think one of the biggest things too is you can kind of tell when somebody's talking to you if they want to engage with you further. So if they're like, blah, 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 blah. Do you have any questions? There's a big difference between that. And I know that this probably feels really big and can be very overwhelming. You know, if you have any questions, please stop me at any point. I'm happy to answer them, or saying, what questions do you have for me? Instead of saying, well, do you have any questions? I mean, just those little nuances in the way you talk to people can make a super big difference. Erin, do you have any?
No, I'm glad you brought up the toxic positivity, because that is something that we see a lot as parents. Like, everything will be fine, and then you almost feel ashamed that, oh no, like I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't feel anything but positive, and really being real with this is really what we want. Sure.
I see a couple of people asked about the hard copies. Yes, it's hard copies of Painting the Big Picture. We do have some printed, and we will be able to give those away until they're gone. If you would like hard copies of Painting the Big Picture, please email me. My email address is in the beginning of this presentation, and let me know how many copies you would like. And I can pass that on, and we can get those mailed to you, and we will do that until they are gone. Yep, thank you, Terry. She put my email address in the chat. That's why she's here. Okay, great. Let's see what else. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I went a little fast at the end. We are at 1:30. So I do want to let you know that, again, just a reminder that the parent version of this presentation is happening on February 22nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And my colleague, Christina Trelo-Stevens, will be presenting that. It has lots of resources for families and a lot of strategies for families in that. On preparing for this transition, you can register straight from the link that's in this presentation, or you can sign up if you're on our list, or you should have been recently sent an email to sign up for that. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it. We will get these resources sent out just as soon as possible. I will send everything on now to our intake coordinator to get out the certificate of attendance to people who attended, PDF of the slides, and a recording will be uploaded again to our YouTube channel. And I will notify everybody as soon as that is done.
Hey, here's a cool question. Kimberly asked, are there specific resources that can assist with promoting racial equity in IEP spaces? I don't know.
Wow,
you?
that's very good. That's very good. And maybe a Karen Montague question. That's one of the answers where I don't know, but I'll find out comes into play. I like that. I like that question a lot.
Yeah, Kimberly, if you don't mind, would you pop your email address into the chat real quick if you're still here? And otherwise, we'll search you through our attendance list and see if we can get you a resource or point you in a direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that, I'd like to actually post a resource on that on our Facebook page to make it available broadly, for sure. Okay, fantastic. Yes, please share with all. Yeah, I think that's a very important resource. Absolutely. Yep, we will look into that. We will gather information from the appropriate people. And yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. I echo that. I also appreciate everyone's time and contributions as well, because you guys played a good part and it had some great questions. I'm glad you found it informative. And we will get all of this information to you just as soon as possible. Again, thank you so much for spending your lunchtime with us. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you all ready for me to end?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Thank you.
here I go.